We all know that delays in the film industry are common. A star gets injured, budgets spiral, a studio merger halts production. We've heard it all before. But what if a film was fully completed, edited, scored, and ready for theaters, then simply vanished without a word? No press release, no official statement, just silence. Some action films seem destined for cult status, only to disappear for months, even years, before quietly surfacing in bargain bins or late-night cable slots. By the time they arrived, the cultural moment had passed. The stars had moved on, and the studios acted like they never existed. These weren't troubled productions. They weren't banned or censored. They were simply withheld. Hidden away like classified files no one was allowed to open. Why? That's the question that's haunted genre fans and industry insiders alike. Some blame studio politics. Others whisper about internal sabotage or buried controversies. And a few suggest something even darker, that these films revealed too much about violence, corruption, or the people funding them. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is clear. These are not ordinary delays. These are erasures, redactions, moments in action cinema history that were paused, buried, and released only when no one was looking. Let's unlock 15 of these cases, films that were ready for the world but were locked away for reasons no one ever explained. Fact: Shabak Wahed Project Shadow Chaser 3, 1995. Filmed in 1993 as part of the sci-fi action franchise, Shadow Chaser 3 was meant to keep the momentum going after the surprise cult appeal of its predecessors. Sam Furstenberg, director of American Ninja, returned to helm the project. But despite a completed cut and distribution deal, the film was shelved for nearly 2 years. It wouldn't arrive until late 1995, skipping theatrical entirely. The strangest part? It had 2 alternate titles, 2 different edits, and conflicting release dates across regions, making it almost impossible to trace. Some theorize that the franchise had legal entanglements between production companies in South Africa and the US, causing delays. Others believe the film's bleak ending involving bioterrorism and government sabotage was considered too disturbing for the time. The only thing consistent about Shadow Chaser 3 was confusion. It was a sequel that arrived late, off-brand, and wrapped in silence. And to this day, no one involved has offered a single reason why it was held back. Fact #2, The Silencer, 1992. Lynette Walden and Jack Scalia starred in this dark, stylish thriller about a female assassin hired to clean up political messes. Filmed in 1990 under a modest budget, The Silencer had all the makings of a breakout indie action piece. But the movie didn't release until 2 full years later. And even then, only on home video with a cover that didn't match the plot, a new tagline, and missing scenes. No one explained the delay. The director gave no interviews. And curiously, even hardcore action fans often forget the film exists. Why? Some insiders blame rights issues. Others hint the original cut included references to real political scandals, which raised legal red flags. But there's no documentation, no clear studio trail. It's as if The Silencer was intentionally erased and reintroduced only after being sanitized. A film about covering up crimes got covered up itself. Fact: Shabak Thalatha, Street Night, 1993. Jeff Speakman again. Fresh off The Perfect Weapon, Street Night was supposed to elevate him into the big leagues. Warner Brothers backed it. The trailer promised gritty, street-level violence and complex urban warfare. Filming wrapped in 1992. And then, it disappeared. Despite being a studio project, the film didn't release until mid-1993, with zero marketing push. It bypassed the traditional spring or summer action windows. It was dumped into select cities for a brief theatrical run, then quietly shifted to home video. What happened? Industry analysts speculated that Warner Brothers lost confidence in Speakman's drawing power. Others pointed to internal changes at the studio. New leadership, new priorities, and a shift away from mid-budget martial arts films. There's another theory, though. The film's plot involving corrupt cops, gangland cover-ups, and vigilante justice may have been deemed too politically volatile in the aftermath of the 1992 LA riots. In that context, releasing a film about police violence and racial tension would have been seen as gasoline on a fire. So Street Night was delayed, minimized, and largely forgotten. Not because it failed, but because the world around it changed too fast. Fact hash 4. The Expert, 1995. Jeff Speakman, the lethal star of The Perfect Weapon, returned in The Expert, a dark prison-set revenge film. Shot in 1994, it was designed to position Speakman as a more dramatic, serious action lead. But something derailed the plan. Although the film was test-screened and edited for theatrical release, it was abruptly pulled from the schedule and delayed by nearly a year. When it did arrive direct-to-video, it was in a heavily cut form with new music, changed scenes, and redubbed dialogue. Rumors suggest a behind-the-scenes battle between Speakman's team and the studio. He wanted a grittier, more character-driven story. The distributors wanted more action, less talk. Neither side won. The version released in 1995 is a Frankenstein's monster action stitched around what was once a moody revenge drama. The original cut, sometimes called the director's version, has never been officially released. The Expert might have been Speakman's breakout into layered storytelling. Instead, it became just another title buried under edits, delays, and compromise. Fact, Shabak Khamsa Virtual Combat, 1995. Long before The Matrix, Virtual Combat imagined a future where virtual reality avatars cross into the real world. Starring Don, the Dragon Wilson, and Athena Massey, it was filmed in 1994 with ambitious digital effects and a pulpy, cyber, noir aesthetic. The shoot wrapped fast. Post-production dragged. The film didn't release until 1995, and even then, only in select overseas markets first, Hong Kong, Germany, Italy, before creeping into American video shelves nearly a year later. What caused the delay? Sources point to the film's tech-heavy plot clashing with dated visual effects. Producers allegedly debated reshooting key scenes or upgrading effects that were already outpaced by newer sci-fi releases. Others say studio executives didn't understand how to market a VR story before VR was a household term. Instead of risking confusion or embarrassment, they chose to stall. When it finally released, Virtual Combat looked outdated, even though it had been ahead of its time when filmed. Ironically, its biggest sin was trying to predict a future that arrived too soon. Fact hash 6 Live Wire, 1992. Pierce Brosnan, explosives, political corruption. Live Wire had all the ingredients for a theatrical summer thriller. Produced by HBO Films, it was completed in 1991 with plans for a cinematic release. And then, it didn't happen. Instead, Live Wire quietly premiered on HBO in 1992, before being dumped to VHS with no marketing push, no posters, no trailers. A film with a rising star just a few years before Brosnan became Bond was treated like filler content. Why? Industry whispers point to a strategic shift. HBO, aiming to pivot into prestige TV, may have sacrificed Live Wire as part of that transition, choosing not to compete with major studios in theatrical action. But others suggest the film's premise hit too close to home. In Live Wire, a terrorist develops a chemical explosive that turns water into a detonator, allowing public assassinations through drinking water. Just months before its release, multiple U.S. cities faced water contamination scares. Bad timing or convenient shelving? Live Wire wasn't banned. It wasn't pulled. It was simply hidden in plain sight. Fact, Shabak Saba'a Night Hunter, 1996. Don the Dragon. Wilson was no stranger to low-budget action, but Night Hunter stood out. A vampire martial arts thriller filmed in 1994, it combined supernatural lore with blistering fight choreography and a genuinely bizarre plot. It had all the makings of a cult classic, but for nearly 2 years, no one could see it. Wrapped by late '94, the film missed all release windows for both horror and martial arts seasons. It wasn't until late 1996 that it quietly surfaced in a limited home video release, with minimal fanfare. Some blame distributor turmoil companies merging, rights being shuffled. But deeper rumors point to a stranger cause. The film's unusual blend of genres made it unmarketable. Was it horror? Was it action? Was it satire? Executives reportedly feared the confusion would hurt sales. Rather than invest in branding it correctly, they shelved it. By the time Night Hunter arrived, the vampire trend had cooled, and the opportunity was lost. A film ahead of its time, sentenced to irrelevance by indecision. Fact Shabak Thmaniya, back in action, 1993. Starring Roddy Piper and Billy Blanks, Back in Action promised brute force, buddy cop chaos, and wall-to-wall fight scenes. Shot in Canada in 1992, it wrapped quickly and was intended for a spring 1993 release. Instead, it languished for nearly a year. By the time it appeared on video, many assumed it was just another late entry into the Lethal Weapon knockoff wave. But those who looked closer noticed something off. The film was strangely re-edited. Several fight scenes teased in early trailers were missing. Dialogue had been dubbed. Even the music score differed between international and North American versions. According to some stunt coordinators, the film had originally pushed for an rating due to brutal hand-to-hand sequences, but executives panicked and demanded cuts that, in effect, made the entire film feel neutered. Rather than own the controversy or market the uncut version, the studio chose silence. And the film that could have elevated Blanks and Piper into mainstream action status was buried in its own edits. The real fight was behind the scenes. Fact: Shabak American Samurai 1992. It was marketed as Bloodsport meets Highlander. David Bradley, known for American Ninja, and Mark Dacascos, in his breakout role, clashed in a brutal tale of Eastern mysticism and Western revenge. Shot in 1991, the film wrapped smoothly and even had a scheduled international premiere in mid-1992. Then something strange happened. The US release was delayed without reason. European audiences got access first, mostly via home video, while American fans waited nearly a year for the film to appear, quietly, in VHS bins. There was no theatrical run, no poster campaign, no interviews. Why would a film with established martial arts, stars, and international appeal be ignored in its home market? Some speculate the distributor feared backlash over the film's depiction of underground death matches a trope falling out of favor post-Bloodsport. Others whisper that behind-the-scenes conflicts between producers and Dacascos' agents led to deliberate shelving. Oddly, American Samurai was featured in several martial arts magazines during production and then vanished from media entirely until release. A film designed for combat-loving audiences was seemingly kept from them. Fact: Shabak Fur Red Scorpion 1994. It had a ready-made brand. The original Red Scorpion, starring Dolph Lundgren, had cult appeal. Its sequel, with Matt McComb stepping into the lead, was shot quickly in 1993, an attempt to cash in on the VHS action market. But Red Scorpion 2 didn't see the light of day until deep into 1994, and even then, it arrived without the original's branding power. Why the stall? The production was plagued by post-production indecision. Studio execs reportedly couldn't agree on whether to market it as a true sequel or a standalone title. There were two working cuts, each emphasizing different tones, one leaning into camp, the other toward gritty realism. In the end, they split the difference and buried both. The final product was quietly dumped onto video shelves, with no tie-in to the original film, no press coverage, and no word from the cast. The "two" in the title was retained for home release, but only as a whisper of what it might have been. Was it bad timing, branding, confusion, or just another case of a film sabotaged by silence? Fact: Hassanon Rage and Honor 1992. Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton were martial arts royalty in the early 90 seconds, and Rage and Honor was supposed to be their crowning collaboration. The film, completed in late 1991, was scheduled for release within months. Instead, it was rolled out in fragmented waves. One version premiered in select overseas markets in early 1992. Another slightly re-edited surfaced in US video stores months later. To this day, fans debate which version is official. So what caused the delay? There are hints of censorship conflicts over the film's depiction of police brutality. Others claim that two competing distributors fought over final cut rights. Neither side has ever publicly spoken about the staggered rollout. But perhaps the most telling clue is that Rage and Honor 2 was already in production by the time US viewers saw the first one. A sequel was being filmed, before the original had even been fully released. That doesn't happen by accident. Fact: Shabak Nan. Excessive Force the One. Force on Force. 1995. This wasn't a troubled shoot. Excessive Force 2 had a clear roadmap. Capitalize on the moderate success of the first film, introduce a new lead, Stacey Randall, and pivot the franchise toward a female-driven revenge narrative. Shot in 1993 under the same production company as its predecessor, it was quietly completed within months. And then nothing. The finished film sat dormant until 1995, when it was finally released direct-to-video. No promotional push, no trailers, and not even a whisper from the producers about why the sequel took 2 years to emerge. Some insiders whispered that test screenings were confused by the change in tone and lead. Others hinted that the studio simply lost interest once it realized Jean-Claude Van Damme-style male leads were the safer bet for video sales. But no one ever confirmed anything. Worse yet, the film's own marketing ignored the delay entirely, as if trying to gaslight fans into believing it had just been made. It's one thing to bury a failed project. It's another to pretend it never existed in the first place. Fact, Hasson 3, Chain of Command, 1994. Michael Dudikoff was a known name in the action genre by the early 90 seconds. With American Ninja under his belt, his new project Chain of Command promised political intrigue and explosive set pieces. Filming wrapped in 1993. It was meant for early 1994, but months passed with no word. By the time it did release, it was via limited VHS, no theatrical presence, no international rollout, and no marketing to speak of. The movie seemed to skip the entire system. What happened? One theory points to internal politics. The production company, New Image, was undergoing a distribution shift. Another theory is more mysterious. The film's plot about oil politics and Middle Eastern corruption echoed too closely real-life conflicts brewing at the time. Was the timing too sensitive? Did someone up the chain decide to wait until the news cycle shifted? Or was it just lost in a pile of forgettable genre films being dumped directly to home video? Chain of Command is technically not a lost film, but for many fans, it might as well be. It was buried before it had a chance to make any impact. And to this day, no one from the studio has explained the nearly 1-year stall in its release. FACT. Hasson 4 Quiet Cool. 1986. It was marketed as the next gritty cop thriller New York narcotics officer heads west, only to uncover a brutal marijuana war. Quiet Cool, directed by Clay Boris and starring James Remar, wrapped filming on schedule. Trailers were reportedly cut. The VHS distributor had a date. Then, silence. No theatrical push, no press coverage. The film surfaced with barely a whisper, months later, on VHS racks with a generic cover and no campaign behind it. Insiders say Warner Brothers quietly lost faith in the project after test audiences responded poorly to the film's rural setting and brutal violence. But no memo, no report, and no official response ever confirmed this. Rumors circulated that the film's depiction of corrupt law enforcement didn't sit well with executives. Others claimed the original version had a much darker ending, which was re-edited under pressure. What's certain is this: Quiet Cool didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because it was never given a chance to succeed. Someone in the chain of command made sure it arrived too late to matter. Fact Hasson 5 The Forgotten One, 1989. Shot in 1987, The Forgotten One was never meant to be a blockbuster, but it was finished, scored, and ready. Starring Terry O'Quinn just a year after his haunting turn in The Stepfather, the film blended gothic horror with psychological suspense. The studio had a full plan for release, and then, without warning, everything stopped. The reels were stored, the posters shelved. Not a single trade magazine reported a delay. 2 years later, in 1989, the film was quietly dumped straight to video. No premiere, no interviews. As if someone had decided it was safer, forgotten. To this day, no one from the production has explained the delay. O'Quinn moved on. The director, Philip Badger, never made another major film. And audiences were left wondering why a completely finished movie sat in limbo, invisible to the public, as if it never existed. Was it studio reshuffling? Market strategy? Or did someone decide that the themes, death, guilt, and the supernatural were too unsettling in the late 80 seconds political climate? The film's title may be ironic, or deliberate. Either way, The Forgotten One lives up to its name, in a way no one expected. Bonus fact: The Order, 2001, filmed twice? At first glance, The Order seems like a typical early 2000s action flick. Jean-Claude Van Damme in a globe-trotting chase involving secret societies, stolen artifacts, and religious conspiracies. But look closer, and the story behind the film's existence is stranger than its plot. Production began in 1999. It wrapped in early 2000. Trailers leaked. Posters were printed. Then, nothing. For over a year, the order vanished. By the time it was finally released in 2001, sharp-eyed fans noticed something strange. Footage shown in the early trailers didn't appear in the final cut. Entire scenes, choreographed fight sequences, explosions, even dialogue were missing. Then came the rumors. Some claimed the film was reshot in secret due to a falling out between Van Damme and the original producers. Others said the version that leaked to European test audiences was deemed too anti-religious and pulled under pressure from financiers tied to faith-based organizations. Even odder, the final version of the order carries a different tone, music score, and pacing than early promotional clips suggest. It's as if two versions of the same film existed and only one was allowed to see the light of day. No official explanation has ever been offered. Van Damme has never commented, and the original cut has never surfaced. A film about religious conspiracies, surrounded by a real-life mystery of its own. Which of these delayed releases surprised you the most? Was it a simple case of bad timing, or were some of these films buried for a reason we're not supposed to know? Do you believe in coincidence or quiet censorship? Let us know which film you think deserved better. And if you've heard whispers of another action movie that vanished without a trace, tell us we're always listening. Because sometimes, what doesn't get released tells you more than what does.